you don't have enough time. That's usually what we tell ourselves as multifaceted creatives. This podcast is centered around the highs and lows of being a creative entrepreneur life, and specifically those working a 9 to 5 while balancing their creative career. I'm your host, Lola Nychole, creative director, stylist, visual artist, engineer, and a few other things. And I'm here to give you the inside scoop on how to maintain, develop, and balance your creativity with an emphasis on community. And this podcast is powered by Friends with Imagination. So, you guys, the third episode and second, the visuals just were not giving. I think my mic, it was just some stuff with the audio. Anyway, I do want to say that if you are new to the podcast, hello, how are you doing? I'm so excited to have you here. And if you are returning, thank you so much for tuning in. It's actually pretty crazy. I've been looking at the stats on Buzzsprout, and I've had like 37 plays or downloads in the last 30 to 90 days. And I want to say thank you guys so much. It even shows the locations where you guys at, and it means a ton to me. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you are new here, I do want to go ahead and say that each episode of the podcast is centered around one word. So without further ado, I'm gonna do my whole little Erykah Badu little spiel. Sisters, how y'all feeling? Brothers, y'all all right? Okay, let's get to it. All right, the word for this podcast, episode, is timing. Ooh, I just want to talk about that, and I usually give a why as to why I choose timing or the word that I'm choosing. And honestly, I think one of the hardest things besides balance, and I say every episode, like, oh, this is the hardest thing, but timing and having patience can be so difficult, especially as a creative, and you have these platforms, and it's really easy to compare yourself to your peers and be like, well, what am I doing wrong, So I chose that word because personally, patience can be very hard, but it's all about timing and understanding where you are as a creative and how to stay present in your journey. As they always say, you are exactly where you need to be. Let's take a moment. Let's take a deep breath, because I know that this can be one of those things that is hard to talk about. But you are exactly where you need to be. Okay. So, the first word based off timing that we're going to talk about, our first topic, is patience. Yeah, we're starting off strong. We're already ripping the Band-Aid off. We're ripping the wax off. No warning, no deep breath. So patience can be a very, very tough pill to swallow. We think that we have it all figured out. We are like, especially as creatives, our thoughts run rampant. And it's like, okay, well, boom, like this is going to go this way. I'm intending for it to go to this way. No other way that it's going to go is just going to go my way. But I really want to say that no matter where you are in your journey, it's really important to be kind to yourself and to be patient. The same kindness and grace, Lord, the same grace that you give everybody else, you need to be giving yourself. You are with yourself 24/7. You know your schedule. You know your hopes and dreams better than anybody in the world, but obviously not better than God, because it's already written for you. And I think that's one of the most comforting things about patience and timing, is that everything is already going to be what it is. No opportunity is going to miss you if you're constantly putting in that work. You're meditating, you're praying, you're doing what you're supposed to do. No opportunity is going to miss you. Anything that is meant for you, I know as cliche as it sounds, it's not going to miss you. So that you can find a little reassurance in that one. But I talk about this all the time with one of my friends. Like, a really good example is Kanye. And I remember he also had that documentary on Netflix I actually need to watch again. I only watched the first episode. But anyway, I think Kanye was approaching his 30s or already in his 30s when Kanye's career really started to pop off? So I turned tragedy to triumph. Make music that's fire. Spit my soul through the wire. You know what I'm saying? When the doctor told me I had a I played in my chest. I said, dog, and it's crazy because a lot of your favorite artists, some of them did have that early start, young or mid 20s, but a lot of people, it didn't start really happening until like they're 30. And here I am just now turning 25, and it's like, oh, I told myself when I was 25, like, oh, entrepreneur on deck, I'm doing this, no 9 to 5 for me, I have all these gifts, I'll be fine, I'll be good. But honestly, even just talking about like timing, if I really would have had all of that at like 21, I don't even think I would really be prepared for real to use what God had given me at all. But here I am, 25, and just maturing and understand, you know, what's really for me. So anyway, just imagine if people, especially like Kanye, like would have just listened to the doubt. And a lot of times we are our worst critics. Nobody really is rushing you. Nobody really is looking over. And if they are, girl, boy, fuck them. I'm sorry. Ooh. Forget them. Like, nobody actually is paying attention to you as much as you think they are. And that's not a play on words like I usually do in the beginning of the episode. I give y'all a hook that's like the complete opposite sometimes what I'm talking about. But we are sometimes not as important as we think we are. I think that's just anxiety and us being anxious, thinking that people are observing us and like, oh, they're looking at my timeline. No, it's just your timeline. So imagine all these people, if they would have given up, like we wouldn't even have the icons, the legends. We wouldn't have. So you can find peace in knowing that everything about your journey is catered to you. You're not too late. You're not too old. You didn't mess up. It's okay if you start over. At least you're still going. And I think that's what's the most important thing with patience, like in grace. Give yourself the grace to continue to do and to learn. Like, don't rush anything, because like I said, you probably wouldn't even have the tools that you thought you had, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Like, you have everything that you need now. And again, I don't mean to sound cliche, but everything that you need is already in you, and be patient with yourself. And like I said, like, there's no rushing on your journey. Because somebody said this, I don't know who said this, I need to find it, but they were like, you're saying, oh, like, I don't want to be doing this until like I'm 30. Okay, well, what's going to happen when 30 gets here? Are you going to stop? You've been going that long, why would you stop? Oh, I'm not going to be, if I'm not like this by 21, 25, I'm over it. Why? To me, that's your ego, and that just means that you really didn't want it that bad. You know what I mean? You got to see it through. And there's no way that you can continuously put your energy into something and you not get a good outcome. There's just no way. So, yeah. And also, give yourself some time to cook. You know how to be on TikTok, like, let them cook. Here's the thing. And somebody... Lord have mercy. I be giving these analogies and metaphors, and I promise you, some stuff, it do be in my head, and some stuff, I just spend so much time on socials, and I just be, getting knowledge sucked to my brain. So whoever said this, here's the thing. We need soul food, right? I'm from the South. I'm a Southern girl. I'm from Mississippi. I'm from Memphis. I am a Southern girl. I don't want nothing I can pop into a microwave and it still be a little cold in the middle just because I want to hurry up and get some. See, I need something that's going to stick to my bones. So I need something that's like in a crock pot, give me some veggies, give me some greens and some cornbread and some pinto beans, please. Thank you. And that stuff, it takes time to cook. Okay? Just like those creative juices, literally. Imagine your creative juices in a crock pot. Okay, you got your ideas, you have your craftsmanship, you have your networking, all these things. You would much rather prefer to have something to marinate. And baby, let's even do it for my wine drinkers, okay? How long does that stuff ferment and sit? First of all, I am no connoisseur to the wine. But I just know like some stuff takes time to marinate. And also, let's be clear, it increases the value. It what? It increases the value. Okay. So with that being said, like that's another really, really important thing to consider. Give yourself some time to gain the knowledge, right? Because once you start getting up in your journey, you're going to have people that are going to start asking you questions. They're going to start looking up to you. And 9 times out of 10, if you are kind of like at a higher level, people are already going to assume that you've been in the game for a minute. So you need to know exactly what you're talking about in your craft and what you've learned, the history, the background, those that came before you. And that's not something that happens overnight, especially if you're trying to be in something for the long run and not if, socials go somewhere, because your creativity is never going to leave you ever. And I've been on this soapbox for patience for a minute, y'all. But yeah, give yourself some time to cook because you want it to last. You want to savor in it. You want it to stick to your bones. So we're going to move on to the next point. Is just your journey. And I don't mean to hit some of y'all across the head with this one, but I'm going to do it. Comparison. We're going to talk about that because I feel like a lot of times as creatives, it's so easy to be like, oh, don't compare yourself. No, seriously, like, don't compare yourself. Your journey is completely yours and you should be fully invested as to what's yours. And I know it can be really easy to do that, just especially throughout social media. And I want to say one thing about timing in this episode is that I'm really just addressing us as humans, but also obviously specifically as creatives. But don't compare yourself. I know for myself personally how much time I've sacrificed, how much money I've spent into equipment, to materials, how much time I've lost, how many opportunities with my friends I've declined, how many, like I think I said, but how many hours I stay up. And I can only imagine what it's like across the board for every single creative, honestly. So you already know what you're sacrificing. And it's not to make your situation seem minuscule, because it's not. Because on top of being a creative, you have a life. Not saying that being creative isn't your life, but you have life circumstances, stuff that happens that has nothing to do with creativity, stuff that's completely out of your control. So that's the main thing. You never know what somebody has sacrificed for their winning season. And that winning season could just be them getting into New York Fashion Week, getting their song played on the radio, going platinum, all these things that we see. And even if you're not comparing in socials, sometimes it's easy to be like, to just in everyday life, like you're sharing your experience with creatives. And I'm not going to lie. One thing that shook me completely was Memphis Fashion Week. I did not go to school for fashion. None of that. I'm completely self-taught. And so I'll never forget, he's actually one of my closest friends now. Shout out to V. But V ended up being the first one to show his pieces. And he had this yellow satin dress with this yellow puffer jacket. And I wanted to hide my away. Like, I was like, you know what? And actually, I did, y'all. And this is so funny. This is actually how me and V ended up becoming friends. And this is how you get over that hurdle of comparison. So I'll never forget, everybody had left. And I went up to V. And I was like, hey, I really, really love your work. Would you mind just kind of looking at my pieces with me, because I don't really feel that confident as a designer yet. And he just was completely floored by my stuff and was hyping me up. But even to say, like, usually when you have those feelings of comparison, address them. And I'm even going to push it the envelope further. If you start having feelings of jealousy, you're a human and you're not perfect. And any emotion that you have is how you move forward with the emotion. Never be a weirdo. Never be a weirdo, in short. Okay. Address those feelings and just be like, and I'm gonna tell y'all this. I read this somewhere, but the moment that you kind of start feeling like comparison or like jealousy, I'm not even gonna say envy because that's a whole different topic. But whenever you start having these feelings, it's just because you see something in a person or a thing that you know that you're capable of achieving. And it won't be that thing exactly, obviously, but let's just say like you're like, oh, I really, really, really wanted to be in the museum and have my pieces on the wall. Like, oh, like how did they do that? Be like, okay, well, I gotta set my cookies up before they crumble, and I gotta get to the bag. Bag being, whatever your goal is. We're not all city girls. I'm sorry. But yeah, like just addressing those and not comparing yourself. And I will say, even when it comes down to your journey, just like the same thing that I said, you won't get exactly what everybody has. You aren't trying to be any other creative. You aren't trying to be any other artist. You're trying to find your own lane and style and rock with it. So with that being said, like I told y'all, I am a country girl, and we have this saying in the South. If y'all ain't heard it before, I don't know if y'all are Southern for real, but my family always says it's more than one way to skin a cat. And with that being said, like, it's just more than one way to do something. Even if you look at the highways and roads in the world right now, there's so many exits. There's so many paths. Everybody goes to work for one job that has probably like, I don't know, 100, 200, 1,000 employees. Not everybody's going to take that same route, but they're going to get to work the same location. All these artists you see, music artists, they are mainstream. They all have different lives in the beginning, different circumstances, but they all got to that one goal. And that's what it's like being a creative. And I think that's what's so awesome is that when you take that ego and that pride out and you sit with other creatives and you start actually asking them about their journey. And you know what? I don't think I'm going to do this every episode, but I do want to challenge you. I do want to challenge you that the next creative you meet, talk to them about their journey. Like, how did you start doing this? And typically that's what I do anyway. I'd be so like intrigued. Like, how did you start like knitting? Or how did you start making clothes? How did you start producing, making music? How did you start like scrapbooking, making mugs? Like, how did you start doing that? Ask them that. And just engage in that conversation, because even if you take being a creative out of it as a human being, so many of us have had different circumstances in our life that have led us to this very moment. And one thing that really pushed me to the podcast is that when I started having these conversations, I started realizing that me and my friends have the same problems. Like, we all go through the same things as creatives and stuff like that. So don't think that it's just you. Again, like, that's ego and that's pride, but that's also the enemy trying to convince you that this is just your own problem and you don't have anybody to stand with you. And that's also what pushed me to the podcast, because I'm like, if my friend group is having all these problems, there's other creatives in the world that are struggling with the same thing. Nobody's just saying anything. So, yeah. And I'm going to say this too. The only person that you are competing with is yourself. For real. The only person that you're competing with is yourself. And that is going to bring me into the next point, is that you need to acknowledge where you are. Acknowledge where you are. Because the only thing that you should be comparing is who you used to be and who you are now. I'm going to break that down again. The only thing that you should be comparing, or person that you should be comparing, is the person that you used to be and the person that you are now. That is the only form of comparison that I think anybody should ever do. Because in that, you're going to realize how far you actually came on your journey. And you're acknowledging, at one point, I didn't have half that I have now. And I love this. I was on TikTok. I'm a TikTok girly. Anyway, I was on TikTok, and one of the most grounding things is that the girl was just saying, like, look around your room and stuff, and everything that you have around you was once a thought, but it is now a physical manifestation that is in your possession. And that's something that you have to consider as a creative. One of the most powerful things that a creative has is their mind. It is literally something that people pay you for. It is something that people can be envious of, and it is nothing that is truly tangible. It is your thoughts. And as a creative, you already know how priceless your thoughts are. I actually was having this conversation with V yesterday, and I was just telling him, like, working a 9 to 5 is really cool and all, and I really appreciate it because it funds the fun. But I truly believe that no amount of money could ever account for my thoughts and my creativity. It's priceless. It's so priceless. And of course, like, I want to work for myself, and, I'll, have my rates and stuff. But at the end of the day, I feel like the thoughts of a creative is priceless. So, anywho, with that, like, look at your old work and your new work, and like I said, acknowledge where you are and compare. Like I said, the only person you should ever be comparing yourself to is you. So look at that old work and look at that new work and just sit with how much you've grown. Your first very thing that you made or created up to your most recent work. And I think that is the most highest form of gratitude and grounding, because I think a lot of times as creatives, I've seen so many memes, but it was like starting a new project versus working on the current project, and like the guy's like looking back at the new project while the current project is on his arm. Why do we do that? Like, seriously, I thought it was just me. Like, why do we do that? Like, you working this project you were so excited to start on, you starting on it, and you trying to hurry up so you can move to the next thing. Child, if you don't sit down somewhere and, like I said, enjoy the journey. But no, seriously, like, we move on to stuff so fast. And I don't mean to just keep harboring on social media, but we do that because we're trying to hurry up and, like, post something, get the content out, and do this, do that. And, like, we went to the next project because we're trying to feed into the algorithm. We want to keep up. We want to be consistent. We want to do this. But you know what? F the algorithm. I'll be real with you. I was talking to one of my friends. I'm always going to say their names because I love my friends. I was talking to my friend Gaz, and I was just telling her, like, I'm so over the social media. Like, don't get mad at me, y'all. But I know I was really consistent at the beginning of the year, and trust me, I know I need to continue to be consistent. But it burnt me out, and I was like, I think I'm caring so much about the content and not the actual work that I'm doing. So a quick tip for my artists who are trying to do the content: base the content around what you're already doing. Like, don't think that you have to, like, all the time set out certain stuff. Like, once you pull out that laptop and you start working, prop your phone up. Once you start making pottery, prop that phone up. But you don't have to make art for the content. Make content for the art. Ding, ding, ding. So yeah, acknowledge where you are, which moves me to my next point. It's one thing to acknowledge where you are, but it's another thing to accept where you are. So, this episode actually is going to be longer than I thought it was going to be, but accept where you are. And it's a thing of, like, having the thing where, okay, I'm acknowledging this, but I also need to accept it. Because I think sometimes when you're acknowledging stuff, but you aren't accepting it, that's when I feel like the anxiety and the depression comes in as a creative. Because it's like, I'm acknowledging it, like, okay, cool. But you need to be okay with it. Because sometimes stuff doesn't change overnight. Like I just said, we talked about being a whole crock pot and not a microwave meal where you're still going to be lukewarm in the middle. So, yeah, like, just accept that. Accept where you are. And this is going to be a very, very harsh truth, but there's a good side to it. If you don't like who you are, if you don't like your art, if you don't like the style of anything that you're doing or your circumstances, yes, y'all know I'm an advocate for God and I love God. However, you have the power to change all of that. Okay? If you don't like yourself, you can change it. If you don't like your job, you can change it. If you don't like a lot of things in your life, you have the circumstances to change it. Nobody said it's going to be comfortable, though. Nobody. And even with that, I'll say this, Lotto, I'll see if I can find the clip, but Lotto was basically just saying in an interview where she had, yeah, pray about it, but get up and go. Faith without works is dead. So anything that you want to change in your life, and I'm talking to you as people now and not just creatives, you can change it. If you want to be behind the scenes at the runway shows, you can change it. If you want to work with nonprofits for kids and art, you can do that. You can change your circumstances. It just sometimes is going to take a minute. If you want to shoot for the dopest rappers in the city, you can do that. Just change your circumstances, but that's all going to start with changing your mindset. That's one of the hardest things to change, but you can change that mindset. But yeah, and if you're worried about things not going right, like, God is all knowing, and like I said, that's one thing you can find peace in, and God is going to protect you every step of the way, and I'll just have a sense of vulnerability. I was just kind of raised to always watch people because my family has like seen stuff, they've had things that have altered their trust with people. So growing up, I was already on guard, and being a creative sometimes is very hard because all you want to do is love, because I do feel like in a way that creativity is love. Art is love, but I always tell God, no matter what opportunity I get, no matter what space I'm in, no matter what function I go to with artists, because sometimes everybody isn't as loving. I always ask God to protect me from things seen and unseen, things I can see and things that I cannot. I trust you and love you always. With you, I am everything. Without you, I am nothing. So it's only going to get better. And with that, there's only one way to go but up. And so, I think that's the most positive part about it. Like, if you're not where you want to be, there's only one way to go but up. And if you stumble, if you fall, guess what? You've been there before. You can't go no lower from the darkness of what you have experienced before as a creative, because you're always alchemizing your energy every single time. There's only one way to go but up. So you can't change that. So the next point we're going to get to is probably one of my favorites, and one that I think is going to give a new edge. But so there's been a lot of projects where I just was like, God, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I've made the mood board. I've bought the materials. I've done all these things. And I just, for the life of me, can't make time for it. I can't figure it out. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. But I want to take it a step further and just talk about sometimes you're not in the season to do a project. And I'll just kind of be pretty vulnerable with y'all. I did a shoot last year, kind of like late 2023. And basically, the shoot was just centered around like sexual assault, womanhood, and a few other things. Sorry, trigger warning. I'm so sorry. A few other things. And I was just like, okay, boom. I'm doing the shoot, But realistically, where I was in my life, I had not healed from all of that stuff. So until I really just sat down and I talked about it and I accepted where I was in my life and I acknowledged it, that's when everything started clicking for the shoot. Like, I saw it better. I knew what materials I wanted, hands down. I knew how to build the set. I was good to go. But a lot of times when you look at creativity as a spiritual journey, because I think that's what it is to some people, it helps you heal. And I will always tell people, like, that's the alchemizing energy of just being a creative. So sometimes it's just not the right time. Sometimes you really have to learn a life lesson to move forward with the project and do what you have to do and do what you need to do. So that's one thing I'll say about that. And one thing is that I don't believe in coincidences. I'll say that. So you could think this was like the absolute most perfect time for a project, but one of the most important things to realize as a creative is that your gift and your talents are not your own. So let's just say that, okay, cool. you posted a project, or you put out a project, you put out these series of paintings, these series of whatever you're doing, and, or, whatever, your portfolio, and it never hit the person that it actually was supposed to hit because you released it at the wrong time. It may have been a perfect time for you. Like, life could have just been going great and fine, but sometimes you have to consider who's being impacted with your art. And I know as creatives, we also have the mindset of like, I ain't worried about nobody else. Like, this is my shit. Like, y'all can, go about your business. This is mine. It's mine. But I'm sorry, that's like the ego and pride of an artist, because Billie Eilish, she had an interview where she was just saying that sometimes you have to do stuff so it can impact the next person. It doesn't matter if it was just one person. It did its job. So consider that when you're worried about timing as well, is that maybe God is just aligning the right people to be impacted and take what they need so they can do what they need to do for their art. And then in return, it is just a domino effect, and it's going to keep inspiring people over and over again. So sometimes, and you'll see it, like, you ever find an artist and you find like that one song, and like you go to their songs and you start binging them, it's like, dang, like, where was this song when I really needed it? So it's about the same thing with art, and don't limit yourself in that and thinking that you aren't important or you aren't going to impact people, because you are. The part about art that I love the most is that it is impactful and it is inspirational. And if you don't think so, then I don't think that you're doing your job correctly. No tea, no shade. Mwah, no bars. Okay. So yeah. The next thing that I want to talk about with that is creative block. I think sometimes that creative block is just bad timing, if I'm being honest with you. It's a hot take, but I think that sometimes creative block is bad timing. And I think we're trying to force the timing sometimes. Creative block can show up in a lot of things, like also resistance, because you're trying, but you're scared of like the outcome, or the case may be. But I also think that creative block is, like I said, just bad timing, because God is waiting to move some other stuff and pieces for the puzzle, so your work can be received the way that it is intended to be received. So just a little, different thought process for you. That's what I'm here for. So the last point, and I made it the last one because I just think it's really, really, really important. Gratitude. When you're worried about where you are in your creative career, and if you're doing everything right, if you're doing stuff wrong, express gratitude. And I've kind of talked about it throughout the podcast on different ways to express gratitude, but make a list of stuff that you currently have that you're grateful for. And as creatives, it's very important because you have your hands. And I know as trivial as that may sound, but some people don't have their hands and their fingers, and they're still doing the dang thing. They're still painting, still doing whatever. So be grateful that you have that. You have your eyes to see exactly what it is you're working on. You have your touch. You have breath in your body. You have a sound, insane mind, no matter how much it may seem insane sometimes and mad as a creative, because we're also mad scientists. But you have all these things. You have the resources, no matter how limited you think there are. You have the community. And if you don't think you have a community, you have one here. So if you ever need anything, please, please, please comment, do something, find my IG. I'll give you guys everything. But there's so much to be grateful for. Water, air, your family, hair on your head, all these things. And even just your gift as a whole is one amazing thing to be grateful for. And even like I said, comparing your old stuff to your new stuff and seeing how much you've grown, looking at your room, how much you've asked God for, and it's now in your hands tangibly. So expressing gratitude can help you appreciate timing so much more. And you'll get there. It's one of those things that's easier said than done, but you'll get there. Even sometimes if you have to cry, scream, kick, get it out, and then take a moment to debrief and state the things that you're grateful for. But I challenge you also every morning you wake up to just accept what you have and acknowledge what you have and move on from there. And then you can pick up the pieces later, but express that gratitude. Sometimes it's very important to to thank the Creator for what you have and not ask for anything, because you have everything that you have inside of you. I promise you do. And sometimes God just wants to see what we can work with before we get more, and if you are grateful with that. And like I said, those of you who do have that 9 to 5, like I said last episode, sometimes there's lessons in where you are, and even if you do move on to the next thing, or you quit the job and you focus on your creative career full time, you're still going to have to repeat some lessons if you didn't finish them at that 9 to 5, just FYI. And also, I'm going to leave you guys with a gem just because you guys stayed this far. One thing that I have learned that will accelerate you quicker than you ever thought it would is the moment that you learn the lessons in your present, God will move you so fast. So learn the lessons, don't rush them, but learn and accept and acknowledge, and I promise you, He'll get there way further than you thought you would. So those are pretty much my takeaways too with the gratitude. But in general, for the takeaways, acknowledge where you are. Know that you are loved. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. You have everything you need inside of you. God will not bring you this far to drop you, because there's more people that need to be impacted. So it's not all about you. I promise you are exactly where you need to be. Listen up, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. It was longer than I intended for it to be, but we got deep into it. So, sisters, I hope y'all still feeling good, and brothers, I hope y'all still all right. This was the You Should Already Know One Word podcast, powered by Friends with Imagination. You can find us at Friends with Imagination on Instagram. Join us next time. I don't know what word we're talking about next, but I promise it's going to be good. But I am your host, Lola Nychole, and I want to say thank you so much for tuning in. You guys got it, and I wish you an amazing, amazing week. Go tackle the week, tackle that 9 to 5. Don't forget to chase your dreams and everything, and I will see you guys on the other side. Mwah.